Last Thursday in court, former Mayor Tiffany Henyard wiggled off the hook and passed the buck to the village of Dolton. Have the storm clouds cleared, or is she still in hot water? I'm going to give you every detail that I have turned up. Let's go. What is up, gang? Carlton Flowers here with the Go Political channel. And have I got an update for you today? We're back in the South Chicago suburbs in the courtroom, as you can see, and there is news. I've got an update for you on the FOIA case. There has been some action happened just last Thursday, and as I mentioned, it appears that SuperMayor Tiffany Henyard has slithered off the hook. How slimy. It's just disgusting. But before you get too upset, although I'm going to deliver some news that you don't want to hear, hang in there until the end, because it is definitely not over, and I have a lot to report on. So I want you to grab the popcorn, get your coffee, buckle your seatbelt, settle down, focus, and we're going to run through all of the information that I have dug up just in the last few days since this court reconvened on Thursday in South Chicago. All right, so let's just jump straight in, and we're going to tell you what happened, how StuporMayor Tiffany Henyard slithered off the hook, and how she passed the buck to the village of Dolton. And then we're going to talk about whether or not she's getting off scot-free, or what could happen that would throw a wrench into the situation for her. Then we're going to look ahead and fill you in on why the storm clouds have definitely not cleared. I got a lot of information to share, and I'll be curious to know what your thoughts and comments are. So let's get started. All right. So the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, the FOIA lawsuit involving former SuperMayor Tiffany Henyard and the Edgar County Watchdogs heard in Cook County Circuit Court before Judge Caroline K. Moreland, the Democrat judge. Well, it reached a significant development on July the 24th. That was just Thursday. So we're going to talk about that and update you on what happened with that $1,000 a day fine and exactly what Judge Moreland's ruling was. Okay, so case resolution and the contempt of court status. So on July the 24th, Judge Moreland released Tiffany Henyard from contempt of court in the FOIA lawsuit filed by the Watchdogs. So the contempt order, which was issued on May the 23rd, 2025, was due to Henyard's repeated and flagrant violations of court orders to produce a document that she displayed in that January 2024 public meeting. I talked about that in my previous video update about this case, where it was claimed that she provided the trustees this canceled credit card. She accused them of canceling her village credit card. So the release from contempt indicates that Tiffany Henyard has satisfied the court's requirement, ending her personal liability in this aspect of the case. And this comes from the Chicago Tribune. I'm going to post several links so you can dig in and do your research and make sure that what I'm saying is the best interpretation of the truth of the situation. So the fine, that $1,000 a day fine, the judge imposed that starting on May 30th of 2025 for Tiffany's failure to produce that document or an adequate affidavit. All right. So that was lifted on July 24th, last Thursday, when Judge Moreland deemed the amended affidavit to be sufficient. Now, you remember the first affidavit that Tiffany's attorney had submitted. She said, okay, this one's not going to cut it. Either this one flunks and the charges are applied, or you can come back and put the information that I need to have in this document. I predicted that it was going to be rejected, and I was wrong. All right, so by June the 11th, 2025, the fines had reached $9,000, and they were going up $1,000 a day, accruing through early July, and it had it potentially could have hit $40,000 by the time the contempt was laid down or purged. Henyard is no longer personally responsible for the fines since the contempt order was lifted. However, now this is the kicker. This is the disgusting, slimy part of it, which is why I said she slithered off the hook and passed the buck. The village of Dolton may face civil penalties and or attorney's fees related to the FOIA violation. And that's just awful. And you can read about that in the Chicago Tribune story. It was also mentioned in Yahoo News. So the outcome of the amended affidavit, all right, this happened after the initial one was filed on June the 9th. It was rejected as deficient for lacking a perjury certificate and the details of the search efforts, like how hard did she really try to find the thing while she was the mayor. So attorney Bo Brindley filed an amended affidavit that included the perjury certificate. In other words, it had to say, hey, I'm saying under oath that I'm not lying. Otherwise, I will be held liable for perjury. Okay, so we don't know what the exact filing date was for that amended affidavit. We can't find that out. It's not specified anywhere, but Judge Moreland accepted it as sufficient last Thursday, which led to the release from the contempt charge. So the amended affidavit likely addressed the court's requirements, not ours. We don't think that it could have been sufficient by any means, but the court has to do this by what the law states, all right? And so what he had to do was, again, put in that perjury certificate and then detail all of the efforts. So even though we know they were probably lying, there's probably, it looks like the judge could not say, okay, no, you're lying. The judge told him what they had to have. He provided it. And so she was forced to drop it. And that's sad. It's so sad. So they're basically saying that Judge Moreland was convinced that she doesn't know where that document is. She doesn't have it. It doesn't exist. So the sources don't provide the affidavit's full text. We don't have the amended affidavit. The only thing we know is the judge accepted it. Okay, so on to the village of Dolton, the liability. This is the disgusting thing. So she slithers off the hook and passes the buck. So although Tiffany was released from contempt, the village of Dolton is still liable for the potential civil penalties, the attorney's fees to the Edgar County watchdogs for the FOIA violations during Tiffany's time. They're going to have to pay that. So in a related FOIA lawsuit, a whole nother one, all right, Judge David Adkins ordered the village of Dolton on July the 17th, to pay nearly $16,000 in attorney's fees and civil penalties for failing to provide the records requested in early 2024. So the watchdog's attorney is Edward Coach Winehouse, and he's still expressing hope that Moreland would similarly hold Dolton accountable for his unproduced document. So since this other judge slapped them down with this $16,000 fee, Coach Winehouse is saying that he's probably going to be able to force the village of Dolton to pay fines for their failed FOIA request. And that is really sad. So Dolton's attorneys, led by Lauren Duval, countered that the current administration under Mayor Jason House shouldn't be penalized for what Tiffany did, for her lack of action on complying with these FOIA requests. But Moreland has not yet ruled on the penalties as of last Thursday when she released Tiffany from the daily accruing fines. All right, so what's the current case status? Well, with Tiffany Henyard's contempt purged, the focus of the lawsuit has shifted. Okay, now it's on the village of Dolton. It's their responsibility to address the FOIA violation, which is so ridiculous because they never were able to keep her under control and make her abide by the rules and the laws, do proper bookkeeping. You know how it went. We watched all of the monthly Dolton board meetings. We know that the trustees were never able to get her to cooperate. So the watchdogs are going to continue on searching for the document because they think that it exists. Honestly, I don't know. I think she held up something that was fake, or she generated something, a fake document, and it doesn't exist. But they think it exists, so we'll see. And I don't know if Jason House and the Board of Trustees are going to be able to locate something that I think they also realize does not exist. So Judge Moreland is considering whether to impose civil penalties or attorney's fees on Dolton. All right. And that's sad. That's really sad. So there's no new hearing date that's been specified. There's nothing out there. So the case is just active as the court evaluates whether or not they're going to nail the village of Dolton or put sanctions on them. That can happen too. So back to this amended affidavit. It was successful, accepted by the judge. The crap suggested by Brindley, it addressed the deficiencies noted on June the 11th, which was, again, including the perjury certificate and the detailed search efforts. But of course, as I said before, the watchdogs, they're skeptical about the claim that it does not exist. They think that it does exist. They don't think they've done their due diligence to track it down, to find it. I would disagree with that. I don't think it exists. But anyway, this indicates that they may challenge the credibility of the amended affidavit and push for further discovery. Discovery means you're digging up documents, you're interviewing people, you're deposing the village staff. That's discovery. The lack of public access to the affidavit's content limits analysis of its sufficiency. So in other words, we don't know. We can't verify if it's really sufficient because it's not being publicly disclosed. Why is there not transparency for this? I don't know. So we're looking at fines and we're looking at potential financial impact. So the fines, which accrued for the last 44 days from May the 30th till today, basically all it did was put pressure on Tiffany to produce the document. It's like scaring you with the possibility of this fine. But obviously it didn't work because she didn't produce anything. So, wow, lifting the fine. It relieves her of further personal liability since she's not a public figure, and then leaves the village of Dolton with the potential penalties. And who's going to pay for that? The taxpayers, the residents. Disgusting. Very sad. All right, so the watchdogs are going to push on because they're backed up by all of their successful history of filing FOIA lawsuits. They've done a lot of these things, and because of that, they're not going to back off, even though I don't think they're going to turn up anything. Now, what about the judge? Judge Moreland's decision to accept the amended affidavit while keeping the case open for potential village penalties balances individual accountability, Henyard's contempt, with institutional responsibility, Dolton being responsible for the FOIA obligations. So her rulings align with the Illinois FOIA law, which of course prioritizes transparency, and her Democratic affiliation doesn't really show any bias in the case. I know a lot of people think that since she's Democrat, something dirty is going on, but actually it all lines up with what the FOIA laws list. And I think that this is just one of those things where you get an attorney that can twist things and get away with something like this because they have to apply the letter of the law. All right, so there's a lingering question out here. Lingering question. Is she cleared? Is Tiffany Henyard cleared? I know a lot of people are going to be upset with this report and say, she got away with it. Short answer, yes, but no. And I'll get to that. All right. So, Bo Brindley successfully demonstrated that Henyard no longer possesses the requested document, or that it never existed, actually. The contempt order, along with the $1,000 daily fine starting on May 30th, is lifted. She is no longer personally liable for producing the document, but it doesn't absolve her or the Village of Dolton from the broader liability of the FOIA violations. The lawsuit continues against Dolton, which may face civil penalties and attorney's fees for failing to comply with the FOIA request during Tiffany's tenure. Wow, she set them up. That's so sad. She really set them up. And of course, the watchdog's attorney argued that Dolton should be held accountable, which that's sad. Why are they doing that? I mean, they know that it's not the fault of the Board of Trustees. All right. I don't think the village should be held accountable for it, but they do. So the judge is considering those penalties, indicating ongoing institutional liability. So the conclusion is her personal obligation in this case, it's resolved. All right. As long as no other evidence pops up. So if there is a document, if they can find this canceled credit card paper that she showed off, if it's really there, well, that's going to open up the can of worms again. Now, how about the other FOIA lawsuits? Well, there are several other FOIA lawsuits that remain unresolved, with the Illinois Attorney General's office stating that they've received over 50 complaints about ignored or denied requests from the Village of Dolton. This is between January 2021 and April 2024. And then you got another 30 from over in the Thornton Township in about the same time period from 2022 when she became the SuperMayor. All right, so these led to multiple lawsuits, including that high-profile case with WGN Investigates, where Cook County Judge David Atkins ordered Dolton to pay $16,000 in attorney's fees and civil penalties. That was on July 17th. We mentioned that before. So unfortunately for the Village of Dolton, our new mayor, current mayor, Jason House, is likely to face additional penalties or attorney's fees for the unresolved FOIA request that took place during Tiffany's tenure. So since Tiffany's no longer a public official, it's unlikely that she's going to face personal contempt or fines in the other FOIA cases, unless she's directly ordered to produce specific documents that are still in her possession, as in the watchdog case deal with the one sheet of paper. But we know there was a little barbecue that took place over at the car wash. Car wash, yeah. Come on, y'all, and sing it for me. Car wash. A lot of paper is being thrown into the burn barrel. So I'm thinking, related to these other FOIA cases, nothing's going to come from it. So what's next for Tiffany Henyard? What's next? Well, folks, there is hope, because we still have an FBI case being brought against her for potentially misappropriating federal grant funds and alleged financial mismanagement, such as with the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA funds. All right. Now, dig back into my videos and look up the video that I did covering the Lori Lightfoot deal when the village hired her to do an investigation, and you had half the people saying it was a waste of money and the other half saying, no, this was valuable. And I was kind of on the side of Jason House, where I agree with the hiring of Lori Lightfoot, even though she wasn't the greatest mayor in the world and had her own personal issues, but she knows the system. Okay, so Lori Lightfoot dug up a bunch of stuff in her investigation, and it stated details of misused taxpayer dollars, unspent ARPA funds, and failure to comply with federal reporting requirements during Tiffany's tenure. All right. So the investigation began gaining traction in early 2024 with the FBI interviews and subpoenas targeting the village of Dolton and the Thornton Township's financial records. You remember when the FBI kicked in with those subpoenas last year? That was big news. I did a video on that. So I'm thinking that the Lori Lightfoot investigation was worth it, because now the FBI is sitting on that information and it lends credibility, because she used to work for the she used to be a prosecutor, federal prosecutor. All right. Now, we also have, related to what Lori had dug up, the $779,000 in credit card charges in 2023. Yep, you remember that? Remember that meeting where Lori was reading out all of those transactions and everybody was like, oh, that was a pretty funny meeting there. I did a video on that. So the credit card charges, $779,000. And then she also mentioned the budget deficit, where they went from a $5.61 million surplus in 2022 down to a $3.65 million deficit in 2024. So that raised big concerns about the ARPA funds misuse. That's still hanging out there. It's still there, and the FBI is still going through that information. So right now, there have not been any charges filed, no official charges, but that does not indicate that the investigation has concluded. It doesn't mean that. The FBI's focus on financial records and interviews with township employees suggests a thorough probe is going on, But federal investigations, like I've always said, these things can take months to years to yield indictments, especially for very financial crimes, because everything that has gone on here with the cooking of the books, the mixing up of the numbers, the doing the no bid contracts and gaslighting the trustees. Oh man, it makes it really hard to dig through and make sense of the transactions that have gone on. So it's going to take a while. Now, I said it before that I think this is going to end in the same way that Kwame Kilpatrick ended when he was the mayor of Detroit. You can dig back and look at my video report that I did on that, where I had mentioned 2 high-profile cases that kind of tell you what's going to happen in this case. And I think this one will be very similar to what happened with former Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick. So, in my opinion, the Lori Lightfoot report does strengthen the case for potential charges, but we don't have any evidence just yet to confirm that there's imminent action. That's as of today, all right? But it hasn't gone away. All right, so in the next video, guys, and I tell you what, you want to like, comment, subscribe, tick that notification bell right now, because you don't want to miss the next one, all right? Because we're going to dig in and investigate whether or not the FBI will be pursuing Tiffany for all of those alleged no-bid contracts that were going on, all of the alleged kickbacks. You remember the tree trimming video that I did that had over 175,000 views? Yeah. Well, what happened to all of that? We're going to look at that. And we're also going to look at the potential misappropriated Dolton Village funds, plus we're going to look at the civil rights violations, the wrongful terminations, and the SA cover-up case. I got lots of stuff that I dug up on that, and I'll be ready to share it with you, which will further underscore my belief that this FBI investigation ain't going away anytime soon. Now, looking ahead, we have not forgotten about the potential alleged misappropriation of $500,000 related to that Plan B youth violation or youth violence prevention program. You remember that? Yeah. Did Kamal Woods evade accountability? Has he slithered off the hook too? Or will he and Tiffany get a pass for not producing a sliver of evidence that this program was ever implemented? Or are they actually still on the hook for that? Well, stay tuned. I'll be glad to share all of that. For those of you that made it to the end, thanks for watching. Let me know if you appreciate this style of report. Details, facts. Again, Everything in this is alleged. I've got the links in the description for the Chicago Tribune, for everything that I've referenced in getting you up to date. And you can look it up yourself. You can call the courts, and you can get the information along with me. All right, so that's all I've got for this one. This is Carlton, and I am out.